Good morning. Welcome to Fantasy Sports. Today on SportsGrid, it is Fantasy Baseball Draft Month as the season already underway overseas, but gets underway on Thursday. Craig Mish, Davis Maddock to run through your final preparations for your fantasy baseball drafts. Many people will be drafting this weekend, whether it is Saturday or Sunday, and all the way through next week. I still have one more to go. And Davis, I thought that we'd be here on the show, just doing ADP and talking about pitchers. That's our big focus here on the show today. But as it turns out, a national story has sort of sent fantasy baseball players running a little bit, not really sure what to do. I got to tell you, the Shohei Ohtani story is definitely the biggest one, not only of the baseball season, but of the sports calendar as well. Listen, I can only tell you like some of the conversations that I've had as far as this goes, but I think at the very least, there's a little bit of caution drafting Shohei Ohtani right now. I mean, I think it's fair to say that if you're in the, late first, second round, whatever it is, and you're taking this guy, there's going to be a little bit of pause, not really knowing what this true story is, right?
Well, you're definitely right. I think that ultimately, Craig, what it's going to depend on was, look, no one buys the official story. No one buys that Shohei Ohtani's interpreter was able to find a place to get down millions of dollars of sports bets. And in fact, Ohtani's team has already changed the story. The MLB is officially doing their investigation. They reported that on Friday afternoon. I think Ohtani definitely was gambling on sports. I just like that to me just feels like probably the story that's going to come out. But was he gambling on baseball, right? Was he gambling on baseball? The early reporting seems to indicate that either the interpreter or Ohtani or whatever, again, this is all very obfuscated. We're like 72 hours into this story. Seems to be that the bets were not on baseball. And if the bets were not on baseball, sure, maybe you give him the Jameson Williams suspension. Maybe you suspend him. Maybe you send him to counseling. I don't know. But I think ultimately it will definitely be a scandal, Craig, but it's not going to be nearly the scandal it would be if, he was betting on the Angels or against the Angels or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't listen. I don't know right now whether baseball betting is involved in this conversation or not. That I don't know, and I don't know that we'll know that at least initially. But
Right.
I think the concern that you would have, Davis, is strictly Major League Baseball's rules against betting with offshore sports books, which this does qualify as that, especially in a state like California that does not have legalized sports betting. So I think that would be the concern. So before we go any further with this, because we got a lot to cover here on the show today, let's at least pause the conversation here with this. Davis, would you move Ohtani down a little bit in average draft position, knowing what you know right now?
I would. I think you have to move him down a little bit. I just think that because it's sort of one of those if all things are equal situations, you definitely would use that as sort of a bit of a negative tiebreaker. And I don't see how all things can be equal right now. A lot of the other guys, well, in fact, none of the other guys being drafted around Shohei Ohtani. Guess what? Fernando Tatis, Spencer Strider, Freddie Freeman, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Trey Turner, Jose Ramirez, Matt Olson. None of these guys have a pending anything, right? They just simply are who they are. I think where I would slide him in would probably be 17, 18. So that is really early in the second round. I think I would probably take Yordan Alvarez and Bryce Harper and Austin Riley over him right now in an NFBC setting. But when we got to the Albies, the Devers, the Ellie De La Cruz, the Francisco Lindors, I think obviously the upside of even, let's say there is a suspension, maybe even a suspension pending investigation, and he misses, 40 games, 30 games. Yeah. I think he still probably pays that off because I expect him to be that good when he plays.
Yeah, the one thing that you don't want is for him to be on the exempt or restricted or whatever list that they end up putting him on while they do the investigation. If that happens, I would tell you that his ADP would be way lower than that at that point, because then you have an investigation on top of discipline, and games served would be part of it, but that would be a lengthy suspension if indeed that was the case. And again, this is all speculation at this point. We simply don't know. Based on the conversations that I have had, it seems to me, Davis, is the thought process is similar in yours, which is more salacious things are going to come out. It seems too abnormal for somebody who's making, $500,000 a year to withstand over a course of time $4 million in bets. It's just not adding up in particular. But again, remains to be seen. We'll let baseball do their investigation, and then naturally we'll see what they end up ruling on. Now, as far as other things that happened this week, the last 24 hours and the next 24 hours are going to be very active in baseball. I don't know that this is going to affect the mixed league formats, but it will in the American and National League formats, because players are going to be switching teams. Players are triggering their opt-outs. This is happening all over baseball. But Blake Snell, he ended up signing his contract with the San Francisco Giants, 2 years, $62 million. Davis, we also got JD Martinez's next destination, 1 year, $13 million with the New York Mets, so he is now a Met. Wyatt Langford, as we expected, made the Texas Rangers opening day roster, so you could bump him up a little bit, although there wasn't much of a discount. A little bit of surprise that Jackson Holliday is going to start the season in the minors with the Orioles. And, look, you can play the service time game, but really at this point, Davis, if Jackson Holliday was to win Rookie of the Year, the Orioles would get an extra draft pick. So I don't know that that's really in play at this point. Maybe it is, but either way, I think it was a little bit of a disappointing result. He still is a young player, so nobody's throwing their pitchforks here at the Orioles. So a lot to unpack here, Davis. I don't know which way you want to start.
I mean, Craig, you know me well enough to know where I want to start, which is that I'm very disappointed in the Baltimore Orioles. This is like, just imagine a world where, you're in the NBA, you take Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, one of these guys, number 1 overall, and then you say, you know what? We know you're pretty good, but we need you to just practice a little bit more. We need you to practice against guys who are way worse than you for a while to save us a little bit of money. I find it to be so obnoxious. So many people are excited about the Orioles. So many people are excited about Jackson Holliday. Jackson Holliday, by the way, happens to play a position that the Orioles, it's the only of their outfield positions that is filled by a below average major league hitter, which is Jorge Mateo there at the middle infield. I find it disappointing. I hope it does not last very long. I hope that I hope that he and Paul Skeens are basically in the minor leagues for a month. Maybe Skeens makes 3 starts. Maybe Holliday's down there, hits, 9 home runs in 17 games, and they say, you know what, enough of this already. I am excited that Mr. Langford made the major league roster, and I find the Snell signing to be bizarre. Why is it the Giants, the team that decided to pay him? I feel like he was destined to be a Yankee.
Yeah, well, the Giants are that team, Davis, that tried to give Aaron Judge $400 million. And so they got some extra money to burn, so to speak. He has an opt-out, by the way, after this year. All right, we'll take a quick time out here on Fantasy Sports Today. Our pitching discussion begins next. Don't go away. Break.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. We should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere
Only on SportsGrid.
unlike the last one, I don't think these managers are going to sign up for a 1-1 draw. I think the Spurs know they need to win this one. They need the full 3 points to try to get into Champions League position.
But generally speaking, I find Klopp and Liverpool's approach to be much more effective, which is you disrupt those patterns of play, you get in the middle of those triangles, and you put them on the back foot.
Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca, only on SportsGrid.
The great thing about Bracket Central, it is that premier second screen experience. You have the screen of the game up on one, us on the other.
Here's the thing. Just have, you can put the game on. Just flip it. Just turn all the volume down. You have us. We'll guide you to the best. We'll guide you to the game, and I'll give you my coach's take as the games go through. See if we can find some betting opportunities.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish along with Davis Maddock. All right, it's time to break down the pitchers. For those of you who have been watching our shows over the last few weeks, my gosh, we have broken down everything. Hitters, offense, infielders. But we saved pitching for last because it is the most volatile position, probably other than running back, I would say, in fantasy sports overall. I mean, Davis, pitching is so impossible to predict. You have so many pitchers who, start off as sleepers and end on the IL and don't even pitch the entire season. To me, there's two different conversations to be had here. One conversation is about skill set, and the other is just about, can I get 150 innings? I got to tell you, Davis, part of me thinks getting 150 innings is maybe more important than getting the skill set at this point, because at least you get those counting numbers. It's an extremely difficult position to draft.
It is an extremely difficult position to draft because you're having to thread the needle for both things simultaneously, where you can't just draft a guy who throws 170 innings who's terrible, but you can draft a couple guys who throw 170 innings who are like not that great, right? You could probably win a lot of fantasy baseball leagues with like 3 Yusei Kikuchis in your rotation, 4.3 ERA, 1.2 whip, but they're able to go 6 innings every single start. They're racking up 5, 6, 7, 8 strikeouts per start. And if you do have a full staff of guys who are making, 1.5 starts per week, 4 starts per month, then you're going to be way ahead in strikeouts. You're going to be way ahead in wins. You will probably lose ERA. You'll probably lose whip. And then it'll depend on what happens with your, with the saves category. But you don't have to go that far down in any starting pitching rankings to where you start to feel very questionable about guys' skill sets. And we are going to go very far down through the rankings of starting pitchers and go through some sleepers and stuff. But just, or the contrary, you start going through the rankings, you start going through the ADP, and you're like, well, yeah, this guy's really good, but I have no faith or belief that player X is going to be able to throw 20 starts, much less, 32
Right.
starts. So it's really threading the needle of both of those things.
Yeah, it definitely is. And looking at the healthy pitchers, we already have one inside the top 5 that is not, which sort of makes no sense to me when we were looking at the ADP today, because I have not drafted Garrett Cole nor will I this fantasy baseball season. Davis's ADP seems a little bit crazy to me at 28. Spencer Strider is the only first-round pitcher that's being selected this year. Corbin Burns goes to the Orioles, so he's at 21. Speaking of health, you want to knock on the wood here, but Zach Wheeler has been pretty healthy over the course of his career. I think that's why he's inside the top 30. And then Luis Castillo with a nice season last year for Seattle, also there at the top. Look, there's going to be injury risk with all of these pitchers, Davis. You just can't get around it. But naturally, Strider is the one that probably, when you look at it, even if he was only to throw 160 innings, I mean, you could get 300 strikeouts. I think that's why he's the first pitcher off the board this year.
And I am completely with it. Spencer Strider was one of the most impactful players in all of fantasy baseball last season because, he is not only that combination of elite innings, 131 and 186 the last 2 years, he is also, he is so good for your ratios. The guy has a career ERA under 3.5. He has had a whip the last 2 seasons of 1.05. 281 strikeouts, and obviously, he is an Atlanta Brave, so he's going to rack up those wins for you. And he goes, you can probably count on one hand the amount of times that Spencer Strider left a game before he could have been in line for the win, before that 5th inning. So I think Strider, it just feels, it kind of feels like cheating. Like, Craig, if you get 185 innings, 200 innings out of Spencer Strider, you're going to win ERA. You're probably going to win WHIP. I saw our friend Jeff Erickson from RotoWire tweet that every league that he got Spencer Strider in 2023, he won. Every league where he didn't get Spencer Strider, he lost. That's pretty incredible for one player to have that kind of impact. But it goes to what we were saying, because he was that perfect marriage of giving you a ton of innings. 186 innings was very close to being, the top of the leaderboard in the National League. And just while we're here talking about Spencer Strider, he is 150-1 to win National League MVP. Now, obviously, his teammates, Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna Jr., even Ozzie Albies and Austin Riley could threaten him for that. But if Strider goes, he makes every single start, he wins 20 games, and he just had, let's say he has one moment, throws a no-hitter, a perfect game, maybe he has 2 complete games or something like that, and Acuna misses some time, and everyone on the offense is pretty good. I think 150-1 is crazy. I think he should be 75-1, 50-1, or whatever. But we're looking at this list. To me, I actually think he's in a tier of his own. I do not think that Corbin Burns, Zach Wheeler, Louis Castillo, Gausman, Kirby, any of these guys. I think that it's kind of like LaDainian Tomlinson back in the day in fantasy football, or Shaq back in the day in fantasy basketball. He is so much better at his position than everyone else is, in my opinion.
Well, what's strange is it sort of looks light at the top. The Verlanders are gone and the Coles are gone. And it's the Johan Santanas, Pedro Martinez. There was always that guy. And then there was a few others right next to him. And you're right. It does sort of feel different this year, especially when you consider, I don't know how anybody, honestly, no disrespect to Garrett Cole, I don't know how you can possibly take Garrett Cole in that spot. I don't understand that at all. Even if he misses, a month or 2 months, he's going to miss, 10 starts minimum this year. It doesn't make sense to me. All right, let's go to Kevin Gausman. Some nervousness around him a little bit, I think, to start the season, just with some of the hiccups that he's had. His ADP is 34. George Kirby's at 38. 2 former Marlins who I got to know, Pablo Lopez, who was amazing last year, amazing in the postseason. Some people feel like he's the Cy Young Award guy in the AL this year, Davis. He's at 39. Zach Gallen is at 40. Tyler Glasnow, who already made his first start, he's at 43. So, more diciness here, injury risk, I think, above. What's really interesting is the one name that's probably, I'm going to probably ruin it here, that's not much of an injury risk is George Kirby, because, Davis, there was some controversy surrounding some comments that Kirby made about how he's built to go 6 innings and then he's done. I think he said it. He got some criticism for it. But if this is the way Seattle's going to handle it, I kind of like that. Give me George Kirby for 6 innings, 2 ERA, 1.1 WHIP, strikeout per inning, and I'm out. I like it.
The only name from this second tier of starting pitcher list that is all that interesting to me is your old buddy, Zach Gallen. 210 innings last year, 184 innings in a Cy Young caliber season in 2022. One of the only guys I can remember with that level of innings having a sub 1 whip, almost a sub 0.9 whip for Zach Gallen in 2022. 220 strikeouts last year. Absolutely, only 47 walks. 47 walks in a full season. 210. I mean, that is that kind of control. You just don't, like, guys just don't really pitch that way anymore. You know, it's kind of the exact opposite, where everything is generated for strikeouts. And Gallen obviously will get you strikeouts. I mean, not as many as Strider. But if I was to look at this list and say, what's one of these guys who could have a similar impact from the middle rounds the way that Strider had done the year before, I mean, it would definitely be Gallen. Just basically 210 innings, gets lucky with the run prevention, ends with a 2.9 ERA, wins 18 games, and just you win whip if you get Zach Gallen, basically.
Yeah, it was interesting about Glass now, and even you, Darvish, where Davis, it's so different in baseball now, where opening day, and maybe it was just because the guys played overseas, but I think even next week, I think it's going to be rare to see first time through the rotation any of these pitchers go 7-8 innings, right? It feels like, I mean, they took these guys out after like 3 innings. Doesn't it feel like that's good? And people are going to get nervous seeing this, but I just think this is the new way of baseball.
I mean, that was basically just extended spring training for them, right? Like, I'm not that worried about Glass now. I'm not that worried about Yamamoto. I just kind of think, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. We'll take a break. We'll continue our fantasy baseball discussion. Head toward the 4th and 5th round when we come back.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. We should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid.
Unlike the last one, I don't think these managers are going to sign up for a 1-1 draw. I think the Spurs know they need to win this one. They need the full 3 points to try to get into Champions League position.
But generally speaking, I find Klopp and Liverpool's approach to be much more effective, which is you disrupt those patterns of play, you get in the middle of those triangles, and you put them on the back foot.
Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca. Only on SportsGrid.
The great thing about Bracket Central, it is that premier second screen experience. You have the screen of the game up on one, us on the other.
Here's the thing. Just put the game on. Just turn all the volume down. You have us. We'll guide you to the best. We'll guide you to the game, and I'll give you my coach's take as the games go through. See if we can find some betting opportunities.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We continue our preview of pitchers in fantasy baseball. Craig Mish along with Davis Maddock with you here on the show. We get ready, of course, for the NCAA tournament coming up in just a couple hours from now. It is the round of 32, which debuts around 12 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned for more coverage here on SportsGrid there. All right, let's take a look at the ADPs. These are mostly 4th and 5th round picks in fantasy baseball. We got our debut of Yoshi Yamamoto with the Dodgers. It did not go particularly well. His ADP is 44. A huge sleeper, Davis, this year, and probably any fantasy team that I've done, he's on it, is Tariq Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. If you remember to look at his numbers a couple of years ago, extrapolate them, he's the best pitcher in the American League. I mean, really. So health notwithstanding, this could be a monster season for him. Aaron Nola at 52, Logan Webb at 54, Freddie Peralta at 56. What do those three pitchers have in common? They're not going to be that sexy, Davis. They're not going to win you a fantasy league, but health. They're all going to pitch 200 innings, most likely, in fantasy baseball. That's why Nola, Webb, and Peralta go where they go.
Yeah, Nola, I am pretty into. Actually, I mean, he is going to run into a bunch of wins on that team. I think he is really actually not that dissimilar from his teammate, Zach Wheeler. Now, Wheeler has some of the better, like, true high-end performances, but Nola is going to generally be, about a tier worse than that, and he is going to be a huge part of, a very valuable pitching staff because he is going to give you 190, 210 innings. Skubal, it's so funny to think back on, Matt Manning and all of those starting pitchers for the Detroit Tigers that were supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. I'm glad that, one of them has worked out. I wanted to touch on Yamamoto just like a little bit more in depth because I was looking at the NFBC ADP and it's clear that drafters are definitely a little bit perturbed. Now, it'll depend on your league rules. Some league rules actually force you to take that additional, that first start, and you're not obviously not going to want to use that first start from Yamamoto with the 45 ERA in one inning. Now, I believe NFBC rules are it does not count, so you can basically just wipe that off as a bad spring training outing. My thought would be that's a pretty unique buying opportunity for this guy to get paid just an absolute boatload of cash by the Dodgers, have one bad outing that like everyone saw because it was the only baseball that was on. Obviously that crate, 15-11 game between the Dodgers and the Padres, led any sports talk TV show you watched, any baseball show you watched, it was definitely going to be the thing that led it. We're all focusing on Ohtani. Like it's kind of at the forefront right now. And my thought would be, I think the Dodgers scouting and analytics department probably is amongst the best in baseball, if not the best in baseball. And yeah, the Dodgers have a lot of money, but they don't just want to give the money out for nothing. I would be pretty interested in buying Yamamoto because, again, he feels like one of these guys. I don't think he would be a crazy innings guy. Like, I don't think he can get to 200 his first season in Major League Baseball, but maybe like 170, 160 with potentially very good ratios, which, feels insane coming off of that performance against the Padres. But I would be very interested in buying him at any kind of discounted price.
All right, let's continue on. 5th, 6th round in fantasy into the 7th. Framber Valdez will open up again for the Houston Astros, getting all those ground balls like he does, like his former teammate Dallas Keuchel. This is who Valdez is. It seems like the Astros have this recipe for ground balls. Max Fried is there at 61 for the Braves. A lot of wins for him, you would assume. Logan Gilbert, the teammate of Kirby for Seattle's at 65. Blake Snell lands in a really good spot for pitching in San Francisco. That's a great park for him at 67. And look, if Grayson Rodriguez makes this big jump, Davis, at 68, then he's your guy. But there's some volatility there, I would say, with him as well.
Yeah, look, I would not be making the Grayson Rodriguez bet. To be fair to him, he was one of the worst starting pitchers in Major League Baseball last season and did show real clear signs of turning that around after the trade deadline. You know, he had multiple he had multiple starts where he had like a crazy amount of swinging strikes, and that's kind of the thought process behind what he would be able to provide for the Baltimore Orioles, though I do think it is, you know, the acquisition of Corbin Burns was one of the smarter things that any team did this offseason. The guy on this list that I would be betting on would for sure be Blake Snell. It feels like his ADP is baked, like what's baked into it is the thought that he would go to an American League team with a hitter-friendly ballpark, you know, that he would end up being a Yankee or a Red Sox or, you know, just one of these teams where the environment is not going to help him as much as he got help from the environment that he was in last season. And instead, he went from maybe the second most pitcher-friendly environment there in Petco to the most pitcher-friendly environment in all of baseball with the San Francisco Giants. I guess I don't really know what the holdup would be, honestly, at this point. It just feels like taking him after, you know, Framber Valdez and Logan Webb and Scoob. I mean, it just feels like free money. Like we were talking about a guy who like actually was the best pitcher in the National League last year, like won National League, deservedly so, won National League Cy Young and has a lot of financial incentive to repeat that performance. Well, does he have financial incentive to repeat that performance? Because if you're not going to get, if you're not going to get that, well, no, I know. So I know he can opt out, but what more does Blake Snell have to do to get the mega contract? You know, like it's crazy. He definitely does want to continue to pitch well. I would consider him maybe my favorite starting pitcher in the top 100 picks.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And by the way, I would say that the ADP in the NFBC probably not adjusted fully to him signing with San Francisco.
Yes.
I would guess he's going ahead of Gilbert, going ahead of Fried, maybe going ahead of Valdez too at this point. But again, you know, at least a few spots up, I would say. Okay, now, boy, I mean, if you didn't end up with one of the pitchers that we talked about, you know, and you're doing a draft, you better know your pitching at this point forward, because there's a huge risk, I think, with everybody moving forward here. The Dodgers, how about Bobby Miller going inside the top 80 this year, one of their top prospects, and certainly could be phenomenal, but how many innings can he throw this year? I'm not sure. If you didn't watch baseball last year, Davis, you slept through the season and you woke up today and said, Zach Eflin? What? Zach Eflin? 83? How is this possible? This dude led the American League in wins last year, Davis. Tampa Bay unlocked this guy like we've never seen before. 16 wins for the Rays last year, striking out everybody. Yuri Perez has elbow inflammation and not going to be available at the start of the season. I'd be extremely cautious about drafting him. Extremely cautious. Jesus Luzardo there at 86. He'll pitch opening day for Miami. And then Joe Ryan at 90. Pablo Lopez's teammate there. Joe Ryan, another phenomenal pitcher. Twins pitching is pretty good to start the year. But look, there's some risk across the board here. To me, Eflin is really the story here. I mean, where was Eflin going at draft last year? I was ADP 200, 150, 170. I mean, Tampa Bay just unlocks these guys, Davis, like no other. But I guess the question is Tampa Bay, unfortunately, has a long history of their guys getting hurt, too. I mean, this time last year, who was on this list really high? Shane McClanahan, Jeffrey Springs, both not pitching this year. Glasnow, he's gone. He missed a lot of time, too. He's with L.A. So I guess that would be my concern. But Eflin's more of a veteran and doesn't throw necessarily as hard as some of those others.
I mean, Eflin, I guess maybe I misspoke when I said Snell was my favorite buy, because how could Zach Eflin not be your favorite buy if he even replicates 80% of what he did last season? His age 29 season goes to the most innings he'd ever pitched before was 163 all the way back in 2019. Goes to 177 innings pitched. He wins 16 games, 3.5 ERA, almost a sub-1 whip, 24 walks. I mean, 24 walks in a Major League Baseball season it's just kind of insane. It completely, it just jumbles up your brain to think about a pitcher having that strong of command. I think that, and if you, by the way, if you are just like a projections-based drafter, and that's kind of the main thing you care about, the composite projections, if you look at all the stuff combined, so you have Zips, Steamer, Derek Carty's, the Bat, Zach Eflin's like a top 10 starting pitcher, based on the stuff that he put together last year and what the projection systems have him for, because he does project to get a solid amount of innings, projects to be super helpful for your ratios, should win a decent number of games. Like, for example, he is dwarfing in the projection systems the numbers from like Logan Gilbert or Joe Musgrave or Jesus Luzardo, like almost like twice as valuable in the projections as someone like Luzardo. Now, I don't know if I agree with that. All of these methodologies are going to have their issues, but I think it does show. Normally, Craig, drafters are they're sort of overly into risk. They just drafters just love risk. Let's take Jackson Holliday in the top 100. Let's take White Langford at 60, even if he might not break the game. Remember, Bobby Witt Jr. was like a second-round pick last year, and we didn't even know if the guy was going to play for months in Major League Baseball. This is actually a spot where I think drafters are being way too risk adverse, right? They're saying that there's too big of a chance that Zach Eflin turns back in to a pumpkin, or not a pumpkin, but just the guy he was for the Philadelphia Phillies, to the point that I think there's a real, Yuri Perez versus Zach Eflin at this stage. I mean, there's just no question, right? Sure, Yuri might have better raw stuff, but come on, Eflin is going to be the way better fantasy asset.
Yeah, I mean, on top of it, another thing with ADP is, maybe Yuri Perez's ADP has been adjusted here, Davis. I'd have to take
it's dropped a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we don't know. I don't know inevitably how this is going to play out. And I love Yuri Perez. People have asked me a lot of Dynasty League questions. I absolutely think he's a hold, but I would not be drafting him. I would not be drafting him at all in fantasy this year. And I think he's a superstar. I think he's one of the best pitchers in the National League. But anybody with elbow inflammation that's shut down currently, your best case scenario, Davis, is Garrett Cole. Your worst case scenario, you know what that is. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. We should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid.
Unlike the last one, I don't think these managers are going to sign up for a 1-1 draw. I think the Spurs know they need to win this one. They need the full 3 points to try to get into Champions League position.
But generally speaking, I find Klopp and Liverpool's approach to be much more effective, which is you disrupt those patterns of play, you get in the middle of those triangles, and you put them on the back foot.
Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca. Only on SportsGrid.
The great thing about Bracket Central, it is that premier second screen experience. You have the screen of the game up on one, us on the other.
Here's the thing, just you can put the game on. Just two things. Just turn all the volume down. You have us. We'll guide you to the best. We'll guide you to the game, and I'll give you my coach's take as the games go through. See if we can find some betting opportunities.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports. Today we continue previewing pitching in fantasy baseball. Good luck in your fantasy baseball drafts. If you're drafting today or tomorrow or early next week, the majority of you I know will. And for Davis Maddock, he's got to be excited. I mean, why is Davis excited? A Kansas City Royal inside the top 100 that is a pitcher in fantasy baseball? I mean, how far we got to go back to do this? I don't even know.
Zach Greinke.
Is it Greinke? Is that it? I thought of a different name, by the way, inside the top 100. Do you remember who I'm thinking of? You read my mind?
The name I was thinking is a sad one. I think it could have been one of the seasons of Giordano Ventura.
Yes.
I can't remember. Yes. I can't remember if he ever would have been that high. People did really get excited about him, though.
Yeah, Giordano Ventura passed away. But Cole Reagans is starting opening day for the Kansas City Royals, and he's inside the top 100. The Royals, folks, they got a really good pitcher to start the season. I don't know beyond him who they have, but he's really good. Justin Steele, he's at 98. He got hit by a ball yesterday, I believe, and said that he's okay, but his bracket in the tournament is finished. That's what he said on social media yesterday. Joe Musgrove for the Padres, 102. Dylan Cease also on the Padres now with that trade. He's at 105. Tanner Bibby, you'd have to really pay attention to fantasy last year. If you didn't, this name may be like, who's this guy? Really good for Cleveland last year. Cleveland is that pitching factory, Davis, in the American League, like Miami is in the National League. And how about Bibby going first off the board for Cleveland? But I think the Padres did well with this trade, by the way, getting Dylan Cease. We talked about this a little bit, and I think Cease is going to be good for them. I don't think they have any direction in particular. I don't really know what the Padres are doing, whether they're adding or subtracting or going for it or not, letting go of all of these superstars and then trading more prospects to get a pitcher they're only going to have for a couple of years. Kind of odd. But needless to say, Cease is pitching for arbitration in a new contract soon too. So I like that idea. And Musgrove, by the way, always really good, but always like with the little injury hiccups that usually cost him a few games.
Yeah, I mean, remember the Musgrove one was like it was a toe injury, so he couldn't stabilize himself on the mound, but then he ended up coming back way ahead of schedule. So maybe, look, I would forgive you last year if you were not paying super close attention to the Kansas City Royals and Cole Reagans. But Craig, I mean, he really was the only reason to watch Royals games. He and Bobby Witt Jr. Last season, like. He registered 113 strikeouts in 96 innings. He did have some troubles with walks. So in 96 innings, he almost had twice as many walks as Zach Eflin did, for example, in 170 innings. That's kind of his brand of baseball. If you want to be worried, he has not been particularly incredible this spring. He's had a couple rough outings this spring. I am not worried really at all about him. And I think that this is look, we're a pick 100. You're talking about a guy who should probably be your third starting pitcher, your second starting pitcher. You need to be finding some upside at that slot. And like, how different is the range of outcomes for Bobby Miller and Cole Reagans? I would not imagine that those upsides are really all that different. Obviously, Miller is going to have way more upside in terms of the wins. Steele, I don't like at all. I would have Steele on like 0 fantasy baseball teams. Seems like the ultimate like 1-year guy, not a super stable organization in terms of pitching talent. Musgrove, Cease, and BB, I would say they're all fine. I got no issue with any of those guys. Musgrove is probably one of the guys who has a chance to really out earn his spot if he stays healthy, but he's also entering into the stage of his career where starting pitchers start missing injuries with like non-season ending things, like a 33-year-old starting pitcher just misses a month with a calf strain. That just sort of is what happens.
All right, let's continue where we go to a couple of players hurt to start the season. Kodai Senga, who was the biggest dropper in ADP from a month ago, he's now down to 120 in the NFBC. He's going to be out longer than the Mets thought. We have Sonny Gray at 122. He's had a very limited spring, also banged up. Chris Bassett of the Blue Jays, an innings guy. I think it's fair to say with Bassett. Hunter Green is the high upside guy here, and it may be surprising to see people seeing him go as low as 134. But I mean, there are the control issues are real with Hunter Green, and so you better have some pitchers with good ADP. You may get some strikeouts here. I'm going to guess Davis is going to love Hunter Green. There is some risk, and Justin Verlander at this stage of his career. I mean, Davis, we saw another pitcher do this with the Houston Astros and with the New York Yankees for years. It was Roger Clemens. It's like if you're not 100% healthy, Davis, what's the point? Houston just needs Verlander for the playoffs, right? Would it surprise anybody to see Verlander in a week or two delayed, a week or two later delayed, and then come back sometime like in June and just finish out the season just so we can pitch in the postseason? To me, that's the recipe for Verlander this year.
Craig, I'm going to absolutely shock you. For one of the, maybe like very, very often on this show, can I have a fantasy opinion that you do not expect? We both know each other pretty well here on the show. We're like, yeah, I always like the young guy, the unproven guy, the riskiest guy. You know what? I actually think Verlander is a pretty strong buy here because you're right. There's no chance you're getting 32 starts out of him. I think you'd probably be pretty happy with 155 innings and 23 starts or something like that. I think that is probably a win. But Verlander has already done this in his career where it looked like he was cooked. It looked like it was over the hill, looked like he was going to be injured and he wasn't going to be able to make it. And then he came all the way back, obviously, with those incredible 2018 and 2019 seasons. He actually was awesome in 2022 as well. And I think we also misremember his season because it was so tied in with that stink that was on the New York Mets last season. In the end, age 40 season, 162 innings, 3.2 ERA, 144 strikeouts, 45 walks. The 45 walks, I mean, that basically drilled down what the issue was, is he had not had 45 walks in a season since 2017, which was back to when he was, struggling relative to his baseline. I mean, the Astros just do this with guys. They just get guys in their program and they fix whatever it is. I've never really seen it's even. I think the Astros pitching staff, even if you take the cheating stuff out of it, I think they're honestly even better than the Rays at bringing guys in and being like, this is what you do well. This is how we can get you there. This is how we can make you a good Major League Baseball starting pitcher. I think Verlander, especially because, the wins are going to be there because he's going to go 6 innings every time he takes the ball. I feel like, I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, Tanner Beebe, Kodai Senga, Sonny Gray. I mean, Sonny Gray, come on. No one's drafting Sonny Gray as a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. Like, Verlander is like 20 times the buy that Sonny Gray is.
Yeah, I mean, I think Verlander's innings per quality inning will be better than everybody that we just discussed. It's just how many of those are you going to get? I think that's definitely the key. I mean, think about it, Davis. Dallas Keuchel came on in his career way after Justin Verlander and is gone way before. And Keuchel, by the way, best pitcher in baseball for like a 2-year period on Houston. You're right. They just find these guys. Garrett Cole was on Houston. They just find ways to get the best out of what you have. I think that's probably the fair thing to say. And Verlander, you're right, back in Houston, much better than where he was with the Mets. Okay, once upon a time, Chris Sale a few years ago was the top pitcher off the board, or the second pitcher off the board. He's got a nice little bump in ADP. Now he's gone to the Braves. Looks really good, by the way, in the spring, too. His ADP is 141. Michael King, one of the prized possessions for the Padres as he goes over from the Yankees in the Soto trade. Merrill Kelly, another innings guy, solid, 145. Bailey Ober had a breakout season for the Twins, as I mentioned. 1, 2, and 3 for the Twins this year. Very underrated staff, I think. And then Carlos Rodon, who seems to have recaptured a little bit of that magic that he had that last year with San Francisco. He's looked better with the Yankees. They really have nowhere else to turn at this point. It's like Stroman and Rodon and a couple of other pitchers to start their season. Rodon could be a nice price, though, Davis. I mean, if he comes back to even close to what he was, you remember in fantasy a couple of years ago, he was like, I think the 6th or 7th pitcher off the board. Now here he is at like the 20th.
So Rodon was the one that I focused in on here because, again, just looking at the projections, where I was just talking about the composite projections, which, I mean, you can access these anywhere if you just Google composite fantasy baseball projections. So I mentioned Eflin earlier as a guy who's being way discounted relative to his projections. Well, no player is being discounted relative to their projections more than Carlos Rodon, because obviously, what the idea behind baseball projections is to regress guys much closer to, historical averages, league averages, and then draw out of the sample size what they can about a guy's true skill level. And a vast majority of what Rodon has done as a major league player has been, he's been awesome since 2021. And he was so bad last season in 64 innings. But to be fair to him, he was so bad in such a way that it was sort of, he was very bad in a way that it was sort of things out of his control. It was a lot of batted ball variance, learning to pitch in Yankee Stadium. He gave up way more home runs. The walks were not particularly great. 28 walks to 64 strikeouts in 64 innings. I would be betting on Carlos Rodon because, again, just looking at where we are in these drafts, okay, you got Merrill Kelly. Congratulations on Merrill Kelly on your fantasy baseball team. What do you win by selecting Merrill Kelly? To be fair, I guess maybe he's one of these guys who could pitch 180 innings, but Rodon, how surprised would you be if Rodon turned in 3.1 ERA and 1.2 strikeouts per inning, or 1.1, I guess would be more in line. But that's a win, right? Getting that guy's win. And I think Sale is very similar, where it's just like, if Sale's healthy, you win. If you get healthy Chris Sale, you win. But just a lot of the times when you take Chris Sale, 80% of the time, he just is not finishing the season for you.
Yeah, look, White Sox, Red Sox, not the pitching factories that the Braves have been, but the Braves have also had their fair share of injuries. Kyle Wright, has been hurt throughout. I believe he's out for the year, if I'm not mistaken. Ian Anderson, they thought that he would be healthy, and he was not. So, that's definitely part of the conversation. Michael Soroka was a top prospect too. But if Sale can get right, you're right, Davis. I think that is the case. All right, a couple of minutes to go here, and we'll close out closers here. I don't even know what to make of this list, Davis. This is just a disaster to start the season. Edwin Diaz, maybe he's the tier by himself. Hader hasn't been great in the spring. I guess I'm not really worried about it. But look at this list. Joan Duran is the fourth closer going off the board, Davis. He's starting the season on the injured list. He's hurt. He's going to be out a while. Camilo Doval is the fifth. Guys, let's keep going here. You could show the next graphic here because there's even more. Look at this. Devin Williams, he's the seventh off the board. He's out for half the season. Jordan Romano, he's out. he's hurt. I guess you could take a shot with one of these guys, but 3 out of the top 10 in NFC ADP are starting the season on the injured list.
It's unbelievable, and that's why you and I, for as long as we've been doing the show, we've been in lockstep on this. No early picks on a closer. A guy has got to be prime Josh Hader. I think maybe you and I would have said, sure, whatever. Take prime Josh Hader in the third round if that's what you want to do. But by and large, the perfect closer to draft, Craig, is it's the Baltimore Orioles closer, the Marlins closer, the 27th ranked closer who just has the job to start the year. They don't take one of these expensive guys.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, we'll take a quick time out here on Fantasy Sports Today. When we come back, we'll dive more into closers and preview Hour 2. So stay with us here on SportsGrid. This is our Fantasy Baseball Draft Preview. Break.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. We should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's gonna have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid.
Unlike the last one, I don't think these managers are going to sign up for a 1-1 draw. I think the Spurs know they need to win this one. They need the full 3 points to try to get into Champions League position.
But generally speaking, I find Klopp and Liverpool's approach to be much more effective, which is you disrupt those patterns of play, you get in the middle of those triangles, and you put them on the back foot.
Pro League Soccer powered by Marca. Only on SportsGrid.
The great thing about Bracket Central, it is that premier second screen experience. You have the screen of the game up on one, us on the other.
Here's the thing, just have you can put the game on, just flip it, just turn all the volume down. You have us. We'll guide you to the best. We'll guide you to the game, and I'll give you my coach's take as the games go through. See if we can find some betting opportunities.
Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Great.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports. Today we've got a big hour coming for you. Next we continue our average draft position preview. Davis and I are going to take a look at some more pitchers in fantasy, the closer position. Gray Albright's going to join us. We got the SportsGrid 60. We got fantasy or reality. But Davis, most importantly, as we turn the clock almost to noon Eastern, it's almost basketball time again, right? Like that's what we're doing here at SportsGrid. Listen, I got to keep it real. Now my Gators lost, so that was a bummer. I mean, you give up 102 points in an NCAA tournament game, you don't deserve to be in it. But they put me in the bracket, and they were like, hey, you want to join our bracket challenge, Davis? Now, a lot could change over the next couple of days. But the guy who supposedly knows like the least about college basketball and all that, guess who's near the top at the bracket challenge? That's me. I mean, how is it possible, Davis? I got all these experts coming on my show all week talking college basketball. Oh, could this be the upset? No. Could this be the? Oh, no. Have you not watched this tournament before? All you got to do is pick upsets. You get out of the first round. That's how you get on. You did well too. I don't know if you're still doing well. I didn't check yesterday.
Yeah, all my Final Four teams are alive. I think all but one of my Elite Eight teams are alive as well. I mean, look, Craig, I am reading off KenPom.com and sorting by adjusted offensive efficiency and picking based off that. I mean, so the team I root for, the Oklahoma Sooners, didn't make the tournament. The college I went to, Kansas State, didn't make the tournament. So I mean, I got no rooting interest. I was like, okay, I'll root for Nebraska. They have the Japanese point guard, the 5'10" guy who just bombs threes. He was awesome, but we only got one game of that. Like if Nebraska maybe had made a run to the Elite Eight, I could have found some rooting interest. Although I have hated Nebraska since I had like the concept of what a state was, so maybe that would have been difficult for me. But it's been mostly fun thus far. It's like the 4 days everyone in the country cares about college basketball, which is always nice to be paying attention to the same thing as everyone else.
All right, so we'll take our Top of the hour, quick timeout, and we continue looking at pitchers in baseball number 11.